Hello, everybody. Welcome to the webinar. We're going to give it another minute or two to allow people to join. I can see people are coming in, joining us. Yes, so for those of you who haven't attended any of our webinars before, we always encourage everyone to take part in the conversation in the chat. So you can type in your message if you want from where you are joining us. So is it good morning, good afternoon, good evening maybe for some of you? I am based in the UK, so it's just early afternoon, just after lunchtime here, 2 o'clock. Yeah, so we have a couple more people joining. So before we start, I just wanted to just remind you that we've got this chat option to chat anytime during the broadcast. We also have a Q&A option. If you have any questions during this webinar, just feel free to post them at any point in the Q&A or in the chat. I will be keeping an eye on both and passing the questions over to Lukman, to our speaker presenter for today. You don't have to wait until the very end. You can just, whenever something comes up that you want to know more about, that you need more explanation on, please just fire in the chat or Q&A, and we'll get to it during the presentation. And also, this presentation is being recorded. So if for some reason you have to leave early, or you would like to go back and revisit some of the things that we will be talking through or demoing today, then you will be able to do it. For those of you who are here today, you will be able to access the recording through the same link that you've used to join. You just have to give it an hour or so after this event. And then later on, in a couple of weeks' time, you'll also find this recording on our YouTube channel, so we can share it. And it will also be available on demand pretty much right after we finish. Okay, so I think we are probably good to go. So once again, officially welcome to this webinar. So today we're going to talk about building flexible Jakarta EE applications with Apache CouchDB NoSQL database. And our speaker for today is Lukman, who you might already recognize from our previous webinars, our Jakarta EE expert and tech writer at Payara. So really, without further ado, I know you want to hear a bit more of a technical overview and some demos, so I'll leave you with Lukman. So over to you, Lukman, and enjoy.
Yes, thank you very much, Dominica. I'll just share my screen here, share screen 3, and then we start with some background. Hopefully everybody can hear me.
Well, I can hear you and I can see the
Nice.
screen, so hopefully if anyone has any technical issues, please type in the chat as well. I'll keep an eye on that.
Okay, so CouchDB, and I find the name a little bit interesting because the whole theme of CouchDB is that you should just relax. As you can see, that's their motto here, is to relax. And I find the database very, very relaxing. So yeah, anyway, CouchDB, what is CouchDB? CouchDB is a document-based NoSQL database. Now, we've talked about NoSQL databases here at Payara through our webinars a number of times, and CouchDB is one of the NoSQL document-based databases out there from the Apache Software Foundation. Now, personally, what I find very interesting about CouchDB from a lot of the NoSQL databases is that it is designed for the web, essentially built from the ground up to embrace the web. And so if you are used to basic web constructs like REST requests and REST calls and all that, you should be able to pick up CouchDB in no time. So this is essentially all it is. It's a document database that gives you a set of predefined APIs to simply use the database. Now, unlike other databases, for instance, in the SQL world where you have the structured query language or SQL for querying and interacting with the database, CouchDB doesn't have any of that. CouchDB, even in the NoSQL world, like Mongo and the other alternatives, they have their own construct for interacting with the database. CouchDB simply gives you the database and then gives you a set of REST APIs that you can use to interact with the database. And I find it very, very interesting and intuitive because it makes it very easy for you to get started with it. And given the fact that it's not SQL and it's document-based, it means you are really free to structure your data anyhow you see fit. Anyhow you see fit, you are really free to structure your data that way. So it's really suitable when you are starting afresh, when you are starting a new project, you want to see how things pan out. I think it's a perfect fit for you to take a look at. So we're just going to dive in, but before that, what are we going to dive in for? If we check this deployed sample Jakarta EE application, this is running on, it's a very, very vanilla Jakarta EE application that is running on Pyra Cloud. If we check it out here, we have one of the features here is a recipe. So this app simply talks to ChatGPT and then asks for recipes. So you enter some ingredient, it could be anything, and then based on that, ChatGPT gives you some recipe ideas. So let's take this for a spin. Let's start. Let me just enter things here. I'm just making stuff up. There's a rice, carrot, cabbage, olive oil. Let me just say beef, chicken, mushroom, and then I can add bread. And let's see what ChatGPT gives us. So this goes out to ChatGPT and then it gives us the recipes and we just display it here. You can play with this. The link will be shared with you on Pyra Cloud. You can play around with it. You can also deploy your own application there if you so will. Now, this comes back and then what we are going to look at is taking the return data and putting it in a CouchDB database. Now, as this is going, we're going to start, how do you get started with CouchDB? There are a number of ways you can get started with CouchDB, and in the world of containers, the fastest, most flexible way that I always start with anything is through containers. So we're going to see how to start with containers in CouchDB using containers. But here, ChatGPT has given us some recipes. So you can see here, it says vegetable fried rice, a healthy, flavorful dish originated from Asia. So you can see, and then beef stir fry and chicken sandwich. Oops, that's nice. Yeah, so based on this input, I am getting these recipe suggestions here. Now let's come back to CouchDB. There are different ways you can get started with CouchDB. I always prefer getting started with containers. So we pull in our CouchDB, and from this, I just bring in my IDE to this screen. You pull in CouchDB through Docker. So if I come to my Docker Compose file here, you can see I have CouchDB here, and this is Tag2 version 3.3.2. And to get started, you have CouchDB user, CouchDB password, environment variables that you need to pass to the CouchDB database. So we have this app now. Let's fire it up. Let me clear the screen and just do Docker Compose app-d. So we get started here. Now, once it starts, CouchDB gives you, as a web embracing database, CouchDB gives you a very beautiful, intuitive user interface for managing the database. So let's go into the browser again and then come back here. I'll refresh this page here. Now, to log in, this is the default port 5984, which we've mapped to a port on our host machine, so we can access this. And the app is located at _/_utils here. first time you need to log in, and this login is taken from the environment variable, couch user and CouchDB user and CouchDB password that we passed to the container. So let's go back here and then log in. Now, once you log in, you wouldn't have anything here. There's no database here. So we create one. Let's call this Jakarta EE. Jakarta, yes, Jakarta EE, and then we start. So we have a database. Now, CouchDB has a very interesting concept, much like the other NoSQL databases. This database that we've created is much like a basket that can hold documents. It doesn't matter what the documents are. It doesn't matter how they are related to each other. CouchDB really doesn't care. CouchDB simply gives you a database into which you can drop documents. And everything in this is going to be saved as a JSON document. Nothing fancy, just plain raw JSON is going to be saved into the database. So unlike traditional databases where you have to do some kind of structuring and this, there's nothing. You don't need to create a table beforehand. You don't need to do anything. You just have this basket called database where you simply just take your document and drop them in. Now, if you come to the CouchDB website, go to the docs. And then if you look at the introduction here, they have a place where they say why CouchDB, not go back. Yes, this place. CouchDB here, they are the theme, the underlying reason for CouchDB is flexibility. So simply put up the database, drop in your data and go. And the idea of constraints or relations or any of such is not something that is inherent, it's found in CouchDB. So for instance, the example that the documentation site here is that of a business card. If you take a business card, on the face of it, there is the name of the person, their contact number, where they work, and then that is just it. Now you can meet another person who has a business card, and on the face of their business cards or their business card, there is an additional fax number. Now the first person, their business card didn't have it, so it's not there. The second person has it, so it's there. It's the same theme they used to build the database. So you can have unstructured data, you can have structured data, you can have anything in there. So if we come back here, we now have our database created. What can we do? What data do we want to put in there? Now, since we are all Java developers, we are coming from the type-safe world. So a lot of the time, the data you're going to be putting into the CouchDB database is going to actually be Java object that you convert to JSON and then put into the database. That's what you're going to do. So let's go here into our IDE and then inspect our code. So first of all, let's go to our controller of CouchDB here. Now, the reason why I really like CouchDB and Jakarta EE is that you can use the construct available to you in Jakarta EE, the various APIs, and then have the best of both worlds. You have the best of the Java world where as you are writing your code, the compiler is doing a lot of the work behind the scenes for you to make sure you don't shoot yourself in the foot. And then when you are done, you can simply convert those to JSON and then just drop it in your CouchDB database. Now, it's important to stress here that there is no right or wrong way of using the database. There's no right or wrong way. In the end, it's all a matter of preferences. So let's go over this controller and see what is going on there. Is there any questions so far, Dominica?
Yes, we actually do have one question, if you
Okay.
are ready. So most of the enterprise applications are moving towards JavaScript ecosystem or microservice ecosystem. Which type application area Jakarta EE is more suitable for? It's in the chat if you want to reread it.
Yeah, nice. Well, this is an interesting question. I really don't know the data point for this assertion of most enterprises moving, but most enterprises I know are actually moving to much more type-safe places. So they are using more and more type-safe languages like Java, and even on the front end, JavaScript. Most of them are moving there. Now, in terms of where does Jakarta EE fit in, I think the whole point of one of the points of this webinar is to show you the flexibility of Jakarta EE. So there is this misnomer, there's this misconception that Jakarta EE is only suited for big applications, complicated applications, and all that. But I think there is a bit of a misunderstanding. You can actually use Jakarta EE for your pet project, and then you can actually use it for the most complicated project. So it doesn't matter what you are building, you can use Jakarta EE for it. So to give you a typical example, this application that we have here is a Jakarta EE application that is talking to the ChatGPT API, and it is deployed to the cloud running on PyraCloud. Now, PyraCloud is a simple, dead simple way to deploy a Jakarta EE application. So now you can do your pet project and then get it on the internet in a fraction of the time it will take you to do anything else. And you have all the power of the Java ecosystem at your fingertips. There is no other programming language that has the scale, the depth, and the maturity of libraries available on the Java ecosystem. So you have all these available at your fingertips. And so with Jakarta EE 10 especially, you can design practically any application you can think of, anything you can think of. You can design it. So I don't really know where this assertion or what this assertion is based on, but I know a lot of companies are now moving much more to type-safe places. There is the discussion of WebAssembly and all of that, to be able to use WebAssembly in the browser and all of that. So there's a lot of discussions going on. Of course, there has been recent furore about a certain company that is moving from TypeScript back to JavaScript. We saw all of that online, but those are actually outliers. Those are not the norm. So Jakarta EE is very simple, very easy. You can use it for any application and deploy it to the cloud in a fraction of the time you can think of doing in the past. So yeah, you can use it for anything, really. Okay, now, okay, there's another question. What's the front-end technology used? This is Vaadin. I use Vaadin for the front end here. So Vaadin, Jakarta EE, ChatGPT, and everything. So back to the other question, you can see these are different technologies that have been put together to form the application and finally pushed to the cloud for you to access. So I can share this in the chat. Or Dominica, can you please share this in the chat? Let me just send it to you here. And then you can take this for a spin. This is now deployed to PyraCloud. You can give your PyraCloud a trial for 15 days free. Just deploy your Jakarta EE applications there and watch it running in the cloud. So you can deploy it there, use the best of breed of libraries on the Java, in the Java ecosystem, and then deploy it for free. So yeah, it's really very, very simple. Jakarta EE is very, very simple now to get started with, especially in the world of containers. So the only thing that will limit you probably is your imagination, really. Yeah. So CouchDB, we have created our database. Now, if we go back to our code here, I have a controller that does a few things here. Now, because whatever we want to put in the database is Java, and the database is a NoSQL database that accepts JSON. So we take our Java object, and then we use the JSON-B API to convert it to JSON, and then just drop it in the database. And that is it. Now, as we have created, back to the browser here, as we have created our database here, we don't need to do anything. Unlike SQL, where you need to create the tables beforehand before you can do an insertion into the tables. Here, once we create the database, we are good. We can just keep dropping stuff in there. So let's go to the code again and look at the controller. This is our controller. We're not going to run through all of this. Let's go to the GPT service controller here. Now here is where we go to ChatGPT and get the information. When we get the information back, we take the suggestion that is given to us from ChatGPT, and then we drop it in the database. So let's first deploy this. I'll say maybe clean, and then push this to my Para container. Again, I am running everything in containers. So if you come down here, Para server is running here in a container, and CouchDB is also running in a container. So again, the idea of, or the issue of getting started with Jakarta EE, or what you can do with it, is just limited by your imagination, really. Good. So application is deployed here. You can see is that successfully deployed. So let's go to the browser. This is my local instance, and then refresh this. And then this opens up for us. Now, we can just put a breakpoint. If you like, we can put, let me just clear this, a breakpoint here. But for starters, let's just see the data here. Back to the browser. Let's again, now this is now running locally. I can say beans, lettuce. I have no idea. I'm just making stuff up as I go. Lettuce, spinach, carrot, cabbage, olive oil. Yeah, really, this should be good. And then I can ask for recipes here, and then let's see what we get. Takes a bit of time for GPT to respond, especially if the server is busy. Yeah, so we have something. We got a vegetable salad, okay. Simple, healthy, okay, interesting. Stir-fried beans, never heard of this, with carrots, nice, wow, okay. Yeah, so let's come back, refresh our database here. So you can see after some time, I am automatically logged out. So let's go in database. You can see already the number of docs, there is 1. Previously, there was nothing. Now there's 1, and the size is 1 kilobyte. So let's open, this is our document. So this is our first document that has been dropped in. Now, before we look at this document, let's look at the Java object that was put in there. This is our Java object, recipe suggestion. This class here is just this class that holds a list of recipes. Now, if you look at the recipe, you can see you have the recipe name, the comment, the ingredients, and then the cooking steps. This is, I'm not so sure if this is a nice name, but yeah, it's cooking steps, so you know what it is. We are developers. So yeah, cooking steps here. So we have this object that has been a collection of this object that has been mapped to JSON and dropped in the database. So let's go back to the database and open. Now also you can see the document here, the summary of the document here, there is an ID. This ID is auto-generated for us. And then also there is a revision here. We'll talk about revision very soon. Let's open the document, and then you can see. So what is on the UI here, oops, this UI app instance, this here is what we've now stored in the database. So you can see there is an ID. This is auto-generated for us. And then there's the revision. And then we have the recipes here. Going. These are the 2 recipes we got. So we can make a few more requests, and then we should have the information in here. So really, this is how simple, dead simple, it is to get started with CouchDB database, especially on the Jakarta EE platform, where you have all the constructs available to be able to bridge the 2 worlds, the world of full flexibility, where everything is JSON, and the extreme end where you have Java, where everything has a type. Then you know that, okay, I need to be in the middle to take advantage of both. And Jakarta EE gives you that. So here is where we are now. Now, let's go to the code and then inspect what we are doing and how we are using the Jakarta EE construct. Now, what I'm doing here is that I am, first of all, when this bean, this is a simple CDI bean, very, very simple. It's a very dead simple CDI application scope bean where we have a few fields in here. Now, in production, in a production environment, you are going to take configuration data from the environment. You're not going to hard code. In fact, nobody should hard code credentials or any other information in production. You should take them from the environment. They should be externalized. The configuration should be externalized to the application. And that is exactly what we are doing here. We are using the micro profile config API to take these configuration values from outside the application. Now, the source of this could be anywhere. It could be from the environment. It could be from the system. It doesn't really matter. All that matters is that the config API knows where to get this information from. So we are passing in the database name, database URL, database user, and then database password. Now, if you go to this, you can see this here, like this here. This is what we are passing to the controller here. So we take this, and with the config API, you can configure different what we call configuration sources or config sources. And so if you are in production, you can have a configuration source that has the same keys, but with different values, specifically for production. And you wouldn't need to change your code. Once you deploy to production, it should just pick the same. So to give you an idea of how it works, I will log into my ParaCloud environment just to show you how in a production environment, you can use the config API to externalize resources like this, so that when you push, you can make this change there, make that change there, and it's pulled. Now, while I log in on the other screen, we use this information to verify the existence of the database. Now, one thing you would immediately notice here is that we have the HTTP request. And this HTTP request is from the Java, plain Java SE HTTP clients. That's all we are using here. And remember, initially I said the CouchDB database is just RESTy. It's essentially built around REST resources. So all it does is gives you a REST API that you can post information to. And so you don't need any third-party library. There used to be third-party libraries and all that for playing around with the CouchDB, but all of them don't seem to be supported again. All you have to do now is simply use the HTTP client here, and that's exactly what we are doing. So we verify the database exists, and what we are doing here is making an HTTP request here. So we make an HTTP request to the database and check. We make an HTTP head. So in this case, in verifying the existence of the database, we are making an HTTP head or get request here, but this could also be a head request here. So we can change this to head, and then we should get an idea. Now, if you go to the docs, and mostly this is how you learn a new technology, you always consult the docs. So if you come to the API section, API reference section here, and then we come to, there should be a database, API basics, yes. Yes, HTTP, no, that's one, database, yes. If you come to the databases here, you can see, let's start from here. So here, you can use the head request to test for the existence of the database. So you can see the documentation says you can use the head request. Of course, you can make a get request, but you can also use head request here to test for the existence of the database. But in the code, what we are doing here is making a get request, and this should return information to us. Now, in a production environment, you're going to do things a little differently. Because you want the database to exist, when you start your application, you want to validate its existence. So does the database exist? If it doesn't exist, over here in this method, you want to throw some kind of validation exception, custom validation exception that is unique to your environment. And then you just abort the deployment of the application, because if you cannot connect to the database, really there's not much you can do. So you want to verify this. Now, once this is done, we are ready to use. Now, in the save data here, you can see we are passing object, plain super Java object, because we want to be able to use this method polymorphically. We don't need to have different save this type. No, we just have object. Why? Because the underlying database gives us that flexibility. So unlike, for instance, JPA, where everything is typed, in CouchDB, in this NoSQL example, everything is just JSON. So the most important thing, or the only thing the database cares about, is that you give it JSON. And as long as you give the database JSON, it is happy and it's just going to accept it and drop it in your bucket for you. So that is exactly what we are seeing here. We take in an entity, which is an object, and then we generate JSON. How do we generate this JSON? We come here, and then all we are doing is using the JSONB API to convert it to JSON. And this JSONB API here will take the object and then transform it to its JSON equivalent. So if we come here to this database here, you can see everything here is JSON. We took this from the Java object, the type save Java object, which is this one, this particular recipe here. We took this type save Java object and then converted it to JSON in this method. And then once we had JSON here, we created an HTTP request with the JSON here. So we create a post request passing the payload, and this method simply creates HTTP request here. We pass in the header here. Here we are using the basic authentication method. We pass in the authorization header here, the content type. You can see the content type and the accept type is JSON, because everything, nearly everything, not nearly, everything with CouchDB is JSON. So we have this JSON flexibility here. We create our request and then pass the request to the HTTP client that makes the call for us. So in our method, in our save entity, in our save entity here, save data method here, we create the request, we send it, we hand it over to the client, that sends it to the server, and then we are done. So this particular entry in the database here was actually through that mechanism. We had a Java object, then we took it, and then all we did was to simply convert it to JSON, make an HTTP request, and then it is in the database. This is how simple the database is, the CouchDB database is. And so if you have any idea at all about how REST resources work, you could easily get started with Apache CouchDB. Any questions so far?
No more questions at the moment.
Okay, great. So you can get started. And again, it's important to stress that there is always the two extremes. So like the question asked about people moving to JavaScript, the idea of JavaScript, or the interest or the popularity of JavaScript, and the argument between types and untyped and untyped languages and all that almost always comes down to flexibility and how fast you can move things. You want to move things fast, you want to be flexible and all of that. But in the real world, at least in my experience, it's never so straightforward. There's always middle ground, where in certain places you need all the safety and the type safe and the checking you want, and in other places you also need the flexibility. You just want to move so fast. And I think in my experience, Jakarta EE gives you that flexibility. It always takes a middle ground and then gives you the tools and the resources and everything you need to be able to create anything as flexible as you can, while giving you the safety and everything that you have in Java. So it's always a good balance for applications that you are developing. As we are seeing here, we are talking to a NoSQL database through Java using the very constructs that we got from the language and the Jakarta EE platform. So here, all we are doing is HTTP request. So to speak with CouchDB, you just need to make HTTP request. Now let's go to the database and check out something. If we come here, you can see we have our entry here. Now, similar to SQL databases where you have indexes, one of the best practices, according to the CouchDB documentation, is to create indexes for fields that you'll be making queries on. So if we come back to the docs here, there is a place for index. If we come to the index entry here, we come to the index, you can see starting with primary index. So of course, the primary key is always index, as with any database. And then here, you can create indexes for specific fields that you will be querying over and over and over. So you create an index, and then the database will index that and make search on that very fast. So if you look at the API, this is how you create an index. And so depending on how you set your things up, you can create the indexes ahead of time, or you can dynamically create them as and when you add fields and all that. It's always that flexible. So to give you an example, let me bring this terminal to the screen here. Here. Now, if I want to create an index, all I need to do is to make this call. So rather than make the call anywhere else, I can just use the CURL or curl, however you pronounce it, and then make a post request to the database, passing in my password to this endpoint here, which is in the documentation here, underscore, so the database name / index, and then the database should create an index for me. So if I make this call, you can see it says index created here. Now, if you go into the database here, we go back. I'm logged out. I need to log in here. So you can see we have 2 docs, and everything you put in the database is counted as a document. The database doesn't really care. Everything in CouchDB is a document. So if I open this here, now you can see the index is what we have as a second entry here. And you can see the name starts with _design. The concept of designs design documents in CouchDB is very interesting. You can think of design documents as a template that tells CouchDB how to treat certain things or how to carry certain things out. So if you open those documents, you can see the ID is _design, and then some series of numbers with a revision. The language is query, and you can see here, this is the field here that we are indexing. So this has created an index similar to SQL databases where you can have indexes. This is how we create an index in CouchDB. And so this field here now will be indexed. So we can carry out searches on this field. Any questions so far?
No, I don't think so. Yeah, good. Let me quickly check because one of my windows have disappeared somewhere.
Okay.
Zoom.
So
but yeah, we're good to carry on. Okay,
great. So here, speaking of externalizing configurations, if I come to this application, let's start from the IDE. This Jakarta EE application that is deployed to the cloud here, this is think of it as the back end for that. So this is my console. Now, if I come here and I say edit configuration, so this is where I can edit configurations of the application. So if you look here, if I come to my micro profile config here, you can see GPT-4 model, cache enabled, report template, open API. This, you can see these entries. You won't need to see this because I've not deployed this yet, but these ones here are what you are seeing here. So this is where these guys are, and then you can configure this. So once you upload your application, you can do this configuration changes here, and so your configuration is externalized to your application. So in our case here, our database URL, our name, and everything can be different for production and development. Staging, we can have different URL. Development, we can have different URL. Q&A, we can have different URL. Testing, whichever environment, we can have different URL. So you really should get in the habit of externalizing configurations to your application, and the microprofile config API is a good start for you to take a look at. So here now, we have our CouchDB link from Jakarta EE to CouchDB. And really, there's very little to talk about it because it's just REST endpoint. You just create JSON object and make HTTP request. And as you can see, there's no third-party library here. Everything is pure Java and Jakarta EE. There's no third-party library. There's no query language. There is no extraneous stuff you need to learn. The only thing you need to do is to constantly reference the database, the documentation here, because they have it well documented with sample request here and everything. And as long as you're on Jakarta EE, you have the flexibility of JSON-B, JSON-P, and all those JSON processing APIs. You have that flexibility, and you have the HTTP request API from the Java SE. And so you can simply interact with the database in a very, very, very flexible way, really. In a very, very flexible, very, very simple way. Now, to move to the next topic, we can talk about the issue of validation. Of course, you don't take data from the internet and drop it in your database. You really need to pass it through some pipelines. You can think of those pipelines as piping in Bash or something. The data you take should go through some kind of cleansing and cleaning and all of that, sanitizing and all of that, and then you drop it in the database. Again, the Jakarta EE APIs has you covered. If we come to the recipe here, we can validate this. So we can say, for instance, at not blank here, we can validate this. So here, before we call the save data, oops, not here. Before we call, yes, here, yes. Before we call the save data here, we can call the bean validation API. So we can say bean validation, bean validator, yes, bean validator dot, nope, yes. We can use the bean validation API here to create, yes, bean validation, nope. My keyboard is frozen somehow, yes. Let me just stop this, it's not typing well, I'll just stop typing here, yeah. So we can use the bean validation API to do the needed validation before we store in. And if there is a constraint violation, then we are going to throw an exception. Now, in every application, you generally are going to have to create your own custom validation. So, for instance, you can create bean not valid exception or something. And then once you create those, and there is a validation here, you throw those, and the client will know. The client could be anything. It could be, for instance, in this case, the client here is the Varden UI, but the client here could be anything. And so you throw the exception, and then the client knows that there is a validation exception. So you can take the data from the internet. So in this case, the data is from ChatGPT. If it were some user data or something, it doesn't really matter. You can take it, pass it through the sanitizing pipeline, and then sanitize the data before calling to put the data into the database. Any questions so far?
No, no more questions.
Okay. I'm not so sure why my keyboard is not typing. Anyway, yeah. So this is how we can get this done from Jakarta EE. Simply spin up the instance, and then all you do is to create HTTP request. As you can see here, there's nothing. It's just HTTP request using the HTTP client, and then you are done. Using the HTTP client, and then you are done. So really, CouchDB is very simple to get started with in no time at all. In no time, you can get started with every single time you want. Just call the Java API, HTTP, or whichever HTTP client you're comfortable with, create your JSON object, make your HTTP request, and then you are done. There's really not much to write about it at all. There's really not much to write about it. Let me see if this will work. Hopefully, can also do, before we call our service, we can do this. So let me try and see if I can get this to work. Finally, @inject, @inject, and then I can say, still not, can say validator factory, factory. Yes, okay, so at least I'm getting it. So here, this validator factory now, you can use it to validate. So I can say factory dot get validator, and then dot validate, and then we can validate our boot. So we can validate our suggestion. If there is a constraint, yes, if there is a constraint exception, we are going to get a set with those exceptions, and within this set, you are going to have whatever constraint has been violated, and then you can throw an exception. So you do this. So here we can say if validates dot, yeah, is empty. So we only want to carry on if this set doesn't contain any violation exception. If it contains, then you can do an else block here. You can do an else block here, and then throw an exception. So you can do this, validate this guy, and then throw an exception here. If there's nothing, if there's a constraint violation, if there's nothing wrong with the data that has been passed, then you save to the database. So again, you can use the available construct to validate your data. So CouchDB itself is very underwhelming in a positive way, in the sense that there is not much to talk about it. It's very simple. It's very easy to get started. Everything is HTTP REST. You just need to look at which method, which HTTP method or which HTTP endpoint you need to call, and then you just pass in the relevant data, and then you are done. All you need to keep in mind is that depending on your use case, it may not necessarily be the best tool. It can augment. For instance, if you have a very complicated application, you can use CouchDB as part of the data storage warehouses or mechanisms that you have to store certain kind of unstructured data, for instance. You can use that. So you need to do a use case analysis, but to all intents and purposes, it's a fairly easy database to get started with, as long as you know HTTP resources. It's very easy to get started with. So give it a try. There's some people will be available for you to play around with. Give it a try, and then see how easy it is to get started with. And if you have something interesting, you can also sign up for PyraCloud and then deploy it to PyraCloud with a free trial. And then you can share it with us to take a look at. It will be interesting to see what you come up with. So yes, CouchDB as a NoSQL database gives you the flexibility to play around. It gives you the flexibility to get started to do things without the constraints of SQL, for instance, where you need to do things upfront. So you can think of CouchDB as the JavaScript of databases, if you so will, because it's very, very flexible, yet very, very powerful. So you can get started with it easily and still maintain the goodness of all the type safety. So again, in our case here, we are doing everything in Java, we are validating in Java and everything. And we only go to the database when everything is kosher clean. So you have the best of both worlds, Jakarta EE and Java on the one hand, and CouchDB, which embraces the web on the other hand. And you can use these two in the middle to craft anything that you want. And of course, with Payara Cloud as well, you are free to just deploy it up there and then be up and doing in no time. So the only thing that should stop you is your imagination. Over to you, Dominica, in the absence of any questions.
Thank you. Thanks, Lukman. That was really good. Yeah, and I hope everyone got what they expected from this demo, from this presentation. If you have any further questions, then you can always send them over to us at info@payara.fish, or you can follow us on the on socials. I always recommend you to subscribe to our blog at blog@payara.fish, where we post only technical content, and you can always comment on the posts there. We always try to respond to you as soon as possible. I can see there is one question. Thanks for the session. No problem. It's a good intro to CouchDB. Is it possible to use a white background next time? Dark background makes it a little hard to read. Yeah, that possibly is an option. Lukman might.
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, you should have mentioned this earlier. Absolutely. This is ocean blue, but I'm so sorry if it appears as dark. It's ocean blue. So next time, just let me know upfront, and then I'll just change the theme for the presentation. I'm so sorry about that.
No, I think it's at the end of the day, it's a matter of preference as well. But yeah, no problem at all. We are very flexible in that sense, so that shouldn't be a problem. But yeah, I know that Lukman already mentioned, but I'm going to show you really quickly. If you would like to actually get a free trial of Payara Cloud, which Lukman mentioned, you just head over to our website, payara.fish, and you can click here at the top, try free, and that will take you to the page where you can sign up for 15 days free trial of Payara Cloud. And you just click there again and you sign up. Well, I'm already signed up, so you won't see the proper view on here. But yeah, you just click here, sign up with your details, and you should be good to go. We also have a free trial for Payara Platform Enterprise. If you haven't tried it already, this one, you just go to this page, try free, fill in the form, and you will get an email back with a link to download a Payara Platform Enterprise. But we definitely recommend you to hurry up with Payara Cloud if you do want to try it, because that trial is limited. So it's not going to be on forever. So give it a try now while it's still here. Payara Platform Enterprise is always there for you if you would like to give it a go. And we've got one question. Okay, I can see that Lukman's already responding in the chat, so I'll leave it there. Yeah, so just a reminder as well that we are recording this, so if you need to revisit, if there was something that you've missed, you can always go back to it. Just use the same link as you've used to enter this webinar today. So yeah, I think that's all for today. Victor, if you have any further questions, then please head over to info@payara.fish, and we hopefully will be able to answer. And yes, for those of you who would like to join our future webinars, we run them a couple of times a month, usually 2 or 3 times a month, various technologies. But we always talk about Jakarta EE very often with the use of Payara, but not only. As you can see, we've done some other technologies today as well. So we're trying to cover a broad range of technologies that you might use with Payara, with Jakarta EE. So again, sign up to our blog. That's the best way to hear about what is happening, what we're planning, what's in the calendar. So that's the easiest way to stay on top of our events. Okay, so thank you again, Lukman, for another great demo. Thank you very much for everyone who attended, and hopefully we will see you soon. And make sure to try Payara Cloud as well. Thank you and goodbye. Bye-bye.